Podcast City Network.
This is Final Score, your number one podcast for sports news. Here are your hosts, Chris and Craig.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Final Score, episode 66, and we are live on Facebook Live and Twitch. Make sure to go on to both and follow us at PCN Final Score. And you know what? It's going to be an exciting episode. A lot of great stuff going on. But first, I got to bring in none other than my awesome co-host, Craig. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Just having some coffee here, you know. It's delicious. No, it's been good, man. It's been a great weekend. A little bit of R&R, and ready to get back at it for the week. How are you guys doing?
Hanging in there, man. Hanging in there. I got to go to work after this, so you know. we got to get to brass tacks. But we also have none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Kevin Wathen of the Rugby Review. How you doing, bud?
Not doing too bad, guys. Got to go a little bit fishing Friday and Saturday night, and once we check out here, I'm going to head out, grab the poles, and do some shoreline fishing today. So hopefully catch some fish, catch some rays, catch some empty out some cans in the cooler. So it's going to be a good time.
Oh yeah,
the jealousy on this side of the podcast between the two of us is you can't even imagine right now.
Oh, for sure.
You said you were coming up to Jacksonville. Just make your way up, do a little bit of fishing, then continue your way on to Pensacola.
I could, yeah. I'm making my way up that side. So.
Oh man, let's not lie though, Kevin. You're just trying to escape whatever supernatural stuff is happening in that room right now. Okay, so let's just.
It is freaking me out. The light's gone off. I've gone up to try to turn it back on. It automatically comes on. I think I got a ghost or something here.
Got something going on, man. I tell you what. But we definitely have an action-packed show. But before we can get to that, you got to make sure you follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram by searching at PCN Final Score. Giving us a like, give us a follow, invite your friends, share us with your friends, leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing, give us a big thumbs up. However it works out for you. But please just go ahead and show us that support because it's because of you guys that we're able to do this crazy stuff. And we're getting close to that 1K mark on Facebook. So let's keep it going, fans.
So close. So close.
So close.
We're getting there.
So close.
We appreciate everybody that's liked us on Facebook. I know on Twitch we're at 39 followers. We're right at that 40 mark, which is awesome. 155 on Twitter, which is pretty cool, with a very special late follower, by the way, which is awesome. Hopefully, we're going to keep that under wraps for now, because hopefully we can have that person as a guest, which would be huge for us. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, definitely going to be some interesting stuff going on, so definitely make sure to keep your eyes glued. But to kick the show off, we're going to throw it over to Kevin of the Rugby Review. What do you have for us, sir?
I got our round 10 scores, and you guys can see me looking down at my phone. That's because the score line just came into my phone. A game that just finished up, went full time. The Panthers knocking off the Cowboys 22-10. But let's kind of change the pace, go all the way back to Thursday, July 16th, to kick off round 10 in the NRL. We had the Canberra Raiders taking on the Roosters. It was the upset of the week for me. The Canberra Raiders and the scoreline 24-20 over the Roosters. Very close game, very hard-hitting matchup right out of the gates. We go over to the Melbourne Storm. Chris, your team keeps mopping them up, 42-6 over the Gold Coast Titans.
That's
Storm
right.
Keep on strengthening as this code keeps on getting farther and farther into the season. West Tigers with a huge scoreline over the Brisbane Broncos. Brisbane Broncos are turning into the dumpster fire of the NRL. They're losing 48-0 in that matchup. So we saw some promise out of them last week in round 9, but unfortunately this week they just get mopped up by the West Tigers. Saturday morning we had the Dragons 28-22 over the Bulldogs. Bulldogs at the bottom of the rung, so that's not a surprising scoreline there. I'm actually shocked that it was only a 6-point spread on that one. Then the matchup, unfortunately, that I shed a few tears on. I think a remote got lost in its way on the way to the TV. Thankfully, it didn't hit the TV. But the Rabbitohs get beat by the Newcastle Knights 20-18. In that game, there was only about 10 minutes left, and the scoreline was 20-0. And I'm thinking, okay, the Rabbitohs have just basically given up this game. They basically rolled over and died. And all of a sudden, we get 3 quick tries right out of the gates, all within 5 minutes of one another. It comes down to the wire. There's about 2 minutes left to go in the game. Thomas Burgess takes it to the try line, puts it down. They do a video review on it. They figure out that he didn't actually put it down. He knocked it on. So the game ends kind of in controversy. The try taken away from the Rabbitohs. They go back to a set restart all the way back for a scrum. They don't point out the set. They end up ending the game on what I feel is a controversial call, and Rabbitoh fans are with me on that one. We go into the next game, the Manly Sea Eagles taking down the top of the ladder. The Eels lose this week, so it's kind of a shocker there, 22-18. The Cronulla Sharks this morning, big scoreline against the Warriors. They beat them 46-10. And then, like I said, finishing out round 10 was the Panthers over the Cowboys. So exciting action out of the NRL for round 10. I'm going to bring you guys the ladder. Let me bring it up here. The Panthers move into the top spot. Eels at number 2. The Storm, Chris, are at 3 right now. That's the right. Newcastle Knights sitting at the 4 spot. Sydney Roosters drop to the number 5. Canberra Raiders are up to the 6th spot. West Tigers and my Rabbitohs are not out of the top 8. They close out the 8th spot here. So hopefully next week we can get a shocking win over a really good team the next week. So hopefully we can square up against the Knights and come away victorious on that one. And then the bottom of the ladder, we have the Bulldogs, obviously at the very bottom there with the Brisbane Broncos and the Titans. So good news out of the NRL. It's still happening. It's still taking place. Unfortunately, a lot of others have seen the spike in numbers. I actually got a text from one of my buddies out in Australia, and he was getting excited because they just started their second preseason. And unfortunately, as soon as they got news of the comp that was going to start back up after the COVID, they saw the spike in numbers, and the community decided to shut it down. So all those small feeder leagues pretty much ceased to exist until the 2021 season. So unfortunate on that one. Other news out of the U.S., out of the rugby league across the world, is New Zealand actually dropped this, and I'm going to pull it up for all our listeners. That way I get all the information correct. They are seeking a new competition of 8 to 10 teams, which is kind of a shocker. Because they excluded teams like Argentina and South Africa. And there's a lot of rich history between those two teams, but unfortunately, due to logistics and due to this pandemic that we're in, they have to make sure travel stays constricted, travel stays within its geographical location. They're not sending guys all the way to South Africa and all the way back to New Zealand. So they're actually going to look for entry from Australian teams, and they're looking for a Pacific Island team, maybe like a Fiji or American Samoa, to join that competition. So obviously South Africa is not happy with that decision that New Zealand's making, but if you're New Zealand, you can kind of make your own rules because everyone wants to play the All Blacks there in rugby union. Some unfortunate news coming out of the Aussie rules football here in the United States, the USAFL. I know a lot of good friends with the Jacksonville Saints. We brought them up in previous episodes. They have canceled their 2020 season. They put out the official statement a couple days ago, said we're going to scrap the season and we're going to focus on player retainment. We're going to focus on marketing this year, but there's going to be no footy games in the 2020 season. They said we're going to take back off in 2021. So they just dropped that news on Thursday, I believe, making it official. Still have yet to hear word from USARL, though. I've tried to reach out, so we're still waiting on them. They haven't officially canceled. They still have a small glimmer of hope that we're going to get a game in October, maybe early November. So fingers crossed on that one that we actually get some footy games in with rugby league here in America. So that's the news for today. Coming up next week, we're going to have a rugby review interview drop tomorrow, I believe, with Ben Hickson from Aussie Rules Football. He plays on the Jacksonville Saints. This guy is he's in the Navy. He's been in the Navy for a while. He's played for the Saints as a captain/player. So make sure you guys look out for that interview that's going to drop here on Final Score. And then also we're going to come up with the round 11 scores and ladder as they kick off on Thursday and wrap up on Sunday. So that's all I got for you guys today. As we get some rugby news and more news coming in, I'll make sure I share it with you guys.
Definitely. Really crazy though how everything's working out around the world with reactions to the pandemic and how it's greatly affecting sports everywhere, not just here in the United States, but literally everywhere. So hopefully we can get things gearing back up, and a lot of these teams can return to play come next year. So we'll definitely see how it plays out. But you know what else is really always good is checking out all the great content platforms you can find Final Score on.
Absolutely. You can find any of our audio episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Podbean, and on Google Podcasts. You can also find the video version of our podcast on YouTube as well as with all of the other segments that we do, the Rugby Review, Wathen's Wallops, Final Score Stream Team, and any of the other one-off interviews that we have. All of those can be found on YouTube as well. In order to search for Final Score on any platform, just search keyword Final Score, one word, Final Score, and you can find us no matter where you listen to our podcast.
Absolutely. A lot of great stuff that's coming out, a lot of great things that we're doing, and a lot of great things to come. So we'll see how a lot of that works out. But to do so, you got to make sure you follow us. Got to do it. But you know who might be having some trouble with followers right now? That is none other than the Washington NFL franchise, which, yes, they are no longer the dreaded name of Redskins. They are now just Washington NFL franchise. And then, we dropped that, and then 15 women came out and accused this franchise of all kinds of sexual misconduct between 2006 to 2019. So really crazy situation that's breaking right now, and honestly could end up being a really big black eye. Craig, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's funny because with this situation, we're talking about all of these things seem to have come in a snowball for the Washington franchise in the last week, but we didn't release anything on the show, however, because we didn't want to speculate. But I heard rumblings throughout the week all over Reddit and all over Twitter that the name change, the owners wanting out, wasn't just because of the name. That was just their excuse. All these owners know about this misconduct that's been going on. And if you guys remember, or if anyone that's watching remembers, within the last 2 years, 2 times in the last, I would say, 2013 and 2011, I think, 2 times in the last 10 years, there have been other reports of misconduct coming out of this franchise and this organization. So this is not something that's really, I guess, surprising to anybody that is very close to the Washington team. But this is another thing that just kind of puts another, black eye in Dan Snyder's ownership. Now, no, Dan Snyder was not personally named or was not connected to any of these things as of now. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But I would not be surprised. My guess, NFL is going to launch their own investment, in which they're going to require Dan Snyder to turn over a lot of stuff. And I would have no doubt in my mind that this is what they're going to use to try to force Dan Snyder out as owner of the new Washington franchise.
Definitely. But one thing I have seen with it, though, the NFL said is that since the Washington NFL franchise has launched their own internal investigation with a third-party legal contact, that they're really probably going to just sit back and wait for their findings. Now, my thing is, though, is that if you find that this legal contact doesn't find very much, does the NFL at that point launch their own investigation just to make sure?
That's what I'm thinking, is that they're going to launch their own investigation in this at some point, because you've got guys in wanting to be in ownership so badly. Jeff Bezos comes to mind. He was been in connection with potentially buying the Lions over the last couple of years. I would not be surprised if at some point Dan Snyder has to give up ownership and somebody like Jeff Bezos swipes in and picks it up.
Could very well happen. Kevin, what do you think?
I think that we need to have all the investigations go through and be thorough and get all the details of the situation. It just doesn't need to be a third party. We need to have the NFL and whatever other agency needs to carry out the investigation to make sure it's thorough, make sure we get the right, correct answers before we start pointing fingers either way. What I found interesting, though, this actually just dropped a couple minutes ago. Mark Cuban, he actually ran into similar problems with the Dallas Mavericks in 2018, if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
When Sports Illustrated reported misconduct happening in the Mavericks franchise. And he just put out a quote that said, if you know Dan Snyder and if you're involved with the Redskins, if you connect to them, tell Dan and tell his senior management, and you've got to just recognize what you did right and what you did wrong and go from there. You have to accept the mistakes you made. That's painful. I made a lot of mistakes, and that's the only way that this is going to get resolved. So Dan Snyder, who's been in the news, obviously, with the changing of the logo, changing of the name, and he's been very stern from there. He needs to open up and make sure that this is done right, done correctly. He needs to accept his faults, which he has a tough time doing. He hasn't. But if this allegation comes out and it comes out true, he needs to step down, or somebody needs to step down from this leadership. We've shown this leadership has been shaky at best throughout the years, and if these allegations come true, we need to change the leadership there, because if I'm a player, if I'm a Dwayne Haskins there in that Redskins organization, I'm looking for an exit. I'm trying to get off this ship and trying to get onto another team, because I do not want to represent an organization that has all this entanglement going on with it right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is a very Dan Snyder move of him, too, because look at who their new head coach is, Ron Rivera, a very well-respected guy, and he is the one being put out on all the press conferences. Dan Snyder's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Kevin. There needs to be a change. However, being an owner, you get to call the shots, and unless the league forces you out, you can sit there and sit high and mighty as much as you want, because there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
They did change a lot of leadership, so yes, that's a good step in the right direction. 100% agree with you there. I do find it weird that they're using Ron Rivera as the face of the franchise, the scapegoat now, if you will, even though he just started there. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm interested to see what the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to do, because they just hired Gruden as their offensive coordinator, and Gruden has had his name thrown around these accusations as well. So if that happens this late in the game, does the Jacksonville Jaguars, are they proactive about the situation and go out searching for a new OC?
I wouldn't be surprised if Shad Khan, who's been pretty proactive in these kind of things, I wouldn't be surprised if he either has to sit down with Gruden and tell him, like, hey, do you have something you need to tell me? Or they launch their own investigation and then decide what to do from there. But yeah, I would not be surprised if that domino falls as well. I mean, Jay Gruden hasn't really had the best track record as an offensive mind anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that I definitely got to look at. And I think Jacksonville will pull that trigger as quickly as possible if they found any type of actual validity to what's being accused. But with this, we have people like the Washington NFL franchise. They're not Redskins anymore. The team's assistant director of pro personnel, Richard Mann II, was found to have made a lot of inappropriate text messages, which is what really snowballed everything and what was first brought forth to the Washington Post. And literally kind of just snowballed from there, with Jay Gruden being implicated, having sent harassing text messages to players, all kinds of crazy ins and outs of how this story goes. But like we said earlier, the team did hire an attorney, Beth Wilkinson of the Wilkinson Walsh LLP, to quote, conduct a thorough independent review of the entire matter and help the team set new employee standards for the future, end quote. Now, for how far that'll actually go, remains to be seen. But if the NFL does not get involved, I honestly will be very, very surprised, given how closely this will affect them and their image. If the NFL does not launch their own investigation and just takes this attorney's word for whatever is going on inside of that franchise, I will be utterly shocked. But we'll see how it all works out. I don't think this is going to be resolved anytime soon.
If you're the NFL, you have to be looking for a way to get Dan Snyder removed. I think that's why because the Washington team decided to get that third party. That's why the NFL's sitting back like, hey, let's see. But look at all the potential money And this is what the NFL is all about, protecting the shield, protecting the money. Look at all the money that Dan Snyder has either left on the table or has lost in the last month even. I mean, he even released a statement coming out about this stuff, and it was basically a slap in the face to the whole Washington Post story. He's talking about that the Wilkinson Walsh LLP, the quote was, are empowered to do a full unbiased investigation and make any and all requisite recommendations. But he's basically said in here, like, yeah, we're going to change our culture moving forward, but kind of acknowledges that it was there to begin with. Like, we're in American sports in the year 2020. This type of, you look at some of the really bad owners in American sports, and Dan Snyder's name comes up. James Dolan's name comes up. Like, look at the type of leadership that they have. That doesn't even look at, it's not quite the level of like a Donald Sterling type situation where he was in the room when racial remarks were made. But I mean, as long as I'm just waiting for somebody, one of these people, maybe another person outside of the 15 comes up and actually connects Dan Snyder's name to this situation, that's when really heads are going to roll, I think.
Absolutely. I'd have to agree with that, because until he's actually connected, him or the team president, I don't see either really being able to be pushed out. Now, if you're promoting a culture of, harassment and all kinds of different things, then, maybe. But either way, I think the only reason Dan Snyder took the action of trying to change the name and logo of the team was to try and stay in the good graces of the NFL as long as he possibly can. Because if he does get implicated, he's out. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, even the name change, I think, was more so because one of their minority owners owns FedEx, and FedEx has the naming rights for the field. I think that was basically because there was so much pushback from the owners. But I think, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the segment, that the name change didn't come about because of this movement. It was part of it. But I think most of it is all these owners are so fed up with Dan Snyder. I think they knew this type of story was about to come out.
Yes.
And they're like, we're done with you. We want to wash our hands of you.
Exactly.
We're tired of this.
And then everything
Even
breaks.
Washington fans have been clamoring to get rid of Dan Snyder for the last at least 10 years.
Absolutely. So we'll definitely see how this works out. It's definitely going to be extremely interesting because now this entire franchise has so much on its plate. And like you mentioned earlier, I feel bad for Ron Rivera having to literally just take this job. And now you're the one that's going to be taking all these crazy, insane questions about things you really have no part of or have no idea about. And you just got to weather it just so you can coach this team. So it's going to be crazy to see how it works out.
The funny part about this story is that the team at Madden actually has to put in some work now on their game for the first time in probably 10 years. They have gone through and removed all of the Redskins logo, the name, and everything. God forbid they have to actually put in some work on their own video game.
Oh, God forbid.
But it's going to be interesting how quickly this branding comes out, because you know that with the season kind of quickly approaching, they were saying that the Redskins were going to have a new name, new logo, new moniker before the season starts. I mean, time's ticking, guys. What do we do? What are we waiting on?
But the big thing is do we end up even having a season? And that's going to be the kicker.
Right. But I think NFL's planning on having it. But here's the big with the name moniker. They are in negotiation for trademark rights with somebody, which means that it's a name. And I think this is what I think I speculated on this last episode, where last time we talked about this, when we talked about the names and we threw it out to the fans. I think the Senators are the name that they're going to go with, but the Washington Senators are an old MLB baseball team, and the rights are still owned by the conglomerate that owned that team a long time ago. So I think that's what they're fighting for, is to try to see if they can get that name. So I think that's why, but
it could be,
because if it was the Red Tails, we'd already have the name out there. It's open.
Not necessarily.
Somebody owns it, but it's a guy.
Yeah, but apparently there's someone who has went out and started trademarking a bunch of names that Washington was trying to consider, and then they took it further with a bunch of other names they thought that might just end up fitting well. and ended up trying to trademark all of them. Now, I don't know if any of that's coming into play. Don't know if any of them were approved, but something to keep in mind.
He did get them.
Yeah.
He did get them because it's one guy, and he's already had a statement saying that, hey, I'm willing to give it to him for free. Like, no, you're not.
You're trying to make money, bro. Oh my goodness, so ridiculous. But
Well, I'm just wondering, why didn't we think of that?
Because we run a network and a show, and we got too much going on to think of that. Otherwise, I would have done it.
We're dumping too much money into the network and the show to be able to go do that kind of frivolous stuff.
Yeah, because think of how much money you probably spent to get all those trademarks. Come on now. Come on.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous. That is none other than Podcast City Network, our parent network that we love so much and do so much with. You can find us on there at podcastcity.net/FinalScore. And PCN is your home for all up-and-coming independent podcasts, and they really try and curtail to the independent podcaster as much as possible. And you can find them on social media, on their website. You can email them. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can find them on Facebook at facebook.com/Podcast City Network, on Twitter at Podcast City Net. You can find them on YouTube by searching Podcast City Network, and of course, their website at podcastcity.net. And you can go on there and say you need to get in contact with us. There's even a contact section in there. So go on there, send us some stuff. And there's also another section where you can actually join Podcast City Network. So if you have an up-and-coming podcast yourself, you can go ahead and hit up Podcast City Network and go ahead and apply to join us, because they offer an array of membership services, including logo design and branding, social media advertising, live podcast hosting, and much, much more. You also gain access to our network of shows to help with cross-promotion, guests, and your overall reach, while also becoming a part of our ever-expanding PCN community based on people helping people. The best part? No membership fees. So what are you waiting for? Go to podcastcity.net/join now and join the fastest growing independent podcast network around, Podcast City Network.
Yeah, we're looking to grow our sports division as well. If you
Yes.
if you have a sports podcast, if you're interested in joining the Final Score team or the PCN sports division, let us know. Reach out. And you mentioned membership is free right now. I mean, that I don't know where there's a growing independent podcast network where they let you join for free. So if you know anybody that is looking to join up or interested in joining up a podcast network, this is the best time to do it, because I can guarantee you probably a year from now, it won't be free anymore.
No.
I can almost guarantee you, because we try to have limited spots. We try to pick the right people to join the network. We don't just pick anybody to pick anybody.
That's right.
We want to have the right people join the network, because like you said, it's people helping people. We're really excited about the future of the network. So if you have any more questions, please hit us up, DM us, throw it in the chat, and we'll get you more information on Podcast City Network.
Absolutely. So definitely make sure to check it out. And one thing everybody is checking out right now is what the Power 5 conferences just did with proposing an outline for NIL laws. That's right, name, image, and likeness laws to Congress. This is absolutely crazy. Greg, what do you think?
This is called the Student Athlete Equity Act of 2020. So it is in response to, of course, a few of the states individually, Florida, of course, being one of them, where the name and likeness laws were supposed to go into effect this year, but now we don't even know if we're going to have college sports. But a lot of the Power Fives now have been drawing up this proposal, gave it to the NCAA. Now they're going to put that in front of Congress to hopefully push something through. And I know you and I were talking about this. We're a little back and forth on this, because it's so the big story about it, it's just so vague.
Extremely.
Because you and I read the same statement and you interpret it differently than I did. Like that's literally how bad and how NCAA this is of the NCAA to write up a law that is supposed to help student athletes, but is going to end up doing exactly what the NCAA wants, which is hinder these athletes.
Well, that's the big thing too, is that what I thought interesting about this story too is that it portrays NCAA as putting this forward. It wasn't the NCAA. It was the leaders of the Power 5 conferences, which, for all intents and purposes, pretty much have all the influence on the NCAA. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that approach Congress. They're the ones that have been working with congressional leaders to try and put this together. And let's keep in mind, this is not a complete plan. It's not a complete outline. And that's one thing to keep in mind. So a lot of this can change. But with certain aspects of it, some people see it as restrictive. Some people see it as proper. Like you said, me and you both read it and we both interpret it completely different. So it's going to be very interesting how this will look once we get it into a finished format. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it was Representative Walker, if I'm not mistaken, who passed this and is going to present it in front of Congress. He's a Republican out of North Carolina that's presenting this bill. A lot of powerful schools there in that area, North Carolina, and also there in South Carolina with Clemson. I'm interested to see how this tax-exempt status is going to carry out there in Congress, because they're trying to strip the NCAA of that. But they're also putting, like Craig said, putting restrictions on the student athlete to where they have to be tied to a school for a certain amount of time before they start collecting compensation for their name, image, or likeness. And I think it was either a semester or a couple semesters that they had to actually be enrolled at the school before they started getting compensated for that. So it is an NCAA move to make sure they protect their image, they protect their money before these student athletes start getting paid, which to me is ridiculous because, I'm a huge UCF supporter, and if you're selling at the bookstore a number 10 jersey, everyone knows that's Mackenzie Milton. And they're getting millions upon millions of money off these kids' backs, and these kids aren't getting fairly compensated. So we have to try to level the playing field out, because if you are going to ask so much and demand so much out of these student athletes and ask them to go basically get beat up for a chance to make it into the NFL, they need to be compensated for that. Because some of them, a good majority of them, don't make it, and they got to make sure they get their money while they can, while they're in the prime of their careers.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up that example, because the most famous example is, if anyone's ever watched the 30 for 30 documentaries, they did the Fab Five documentary, and Chris Webber said, it was said about Chris Webber multiple times that they saw all these Michigan jerseys with their numbers on them, and they were begging coaches to buy them food. I know it's a lot different than it was in the 90s, but still it's not as good as it could be. And you've got the thing about that. I'm glad you mentioned that point of they have to be in their second semester of college. And they had the NCAA puts in a little segment in here that this is where I know, Chris, you and I saw this a little differently. The quote was, they would prevent athletes from entering into endorsement agreements that, quote, violate university standards or that conflict with institutional sponsorship agreements, end quote. That, to me, says that just like the NCAA just randomly says, you know what, nope, you can't do that because it violates this, but it's so vague. This is extremely vague. I know what they're trying to do is you can't sign to Nike if your school's an Under Armour school. I get that. But this is, I think, a big, wide open door that the schools or the NCAA most likely is going to say, you know what? Nope, that violates a university's standards, and you can't do that.
It's strategically written to be very vague, because they
absolutely
control it however they'd want to control it, however they want to steer this machine. You've seen all the times back in the history of the NCAA them making moves similar to this, where they present something, they're very vague about it, and then they can just kind of steer it the way they need it to be. You're still going to have the universities making millions off these kids' backs. What I'm interested to see is there going to be another format like the XFL where these kids do not have to go through the NCAA to reach the professional ranks. I wish there was another league out there, some type of stepping stone where these kids can go around the NCAA. And I know there's other sports out there that it's easier than football to kind of steer around the NCAA, basketball being one of them that comes to mind. I'm just hoping these athletes get some type of compensation, because I don't think it's fair that the millions of dollars that these universities are banking off of them, and then you're adding this pandemic in here where you're just going to throw the kids' medical safety at risk and throw them back into the playing field because you want your pockets lined. So
yeah, or even the schools like Stanford that are cutting a lot of their varsity sports because the school has lost money from this pandemic. But yeah, with NFL, with football, it's really hard. If we didn't have the pandemic, I think XFL would have been successful enough to warrant another season. But I mean, football's so hard because when you get to the NFL, you're playing against grown-ass men. It's not like basketball or baseball where you can jump in at 18 years old and your skills will be able to overshadow certain things. But this is a violent collision sport. It would be like in rugby, if you're in the NRL and you've got this 18-year-old kid that's coming from somewhere else that's maybe like a prodigy, but from the States, and you try to throw them in there, that kid's going to get broken in half.
Yeah.
There actually is, shocking that you brought that up. There actually is a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds in the NRL that have success. They're not one of the forwards. So I get your point on that. They're not one of those stud forwards that's been in the league and they're kind of hardened and they're used to the hard hits. They're usually out in the wing or one of those skill positions where they're not getting the brunt of it. But yeah, I wish there was another avenue. That way they didn't have to go through the NCAA. So hopefully something pops up or the XFL can continue in later years. But hopefully there is another avenue for these student athletes because the NCAA, they're just benefiting off these kids' backs. Let's be honest.
Sure. For sure.
Yeah,
they
100%.
have been for a long time. And it's crazy to see the amount of money they've been able to make for so many years off the backs of these kids. But the thing is that you're seeing is that with other sports, these kind of leagues, whether it be an NBA G League or you go play internationally or whatever the case may be, there are avenues that are coming up in sports that are being able to curtail to these athletes that want to skip the college experience, because at the end of the day, we know it's just a joke at this point. Most kids don't even stay and get their degrees. Most kids are usually using it as a stepping stone to get to the sport they play professionally. So you don't see it used in the manner that it was intended to when originally introduced. But the big thing I wanted to comment on is getting back to the quote about how vague everything is with the control of this. We need to keep in mind, though, this is still a semi-written outline. This is not a permanent law or anything yet. This is something that's still going to be worked on by congressional leaders, but it's just now at this point being brought forth as something that needs to be seriously looked at. So it's going to take time. It's going to change. But the big thing I looked at with it is that you could see where there's going to be openings for universities to overstep their bounds. But the big thing that I see is that they also still do have to protect the university, their standards and everything that goes into that as well. So, having some kid like, say, a Gardner Minshew has a great stash is still at, Washington State, and, Brazzers decide they want to pick him up. That's not something Washington State's going to want to go ahead and back. So, at that point, it's going to get cut off. But, there's no sense in trying to say, Kellogg's wants to sponsor some kid because they want to put him on the front of a Wheaties box or whatever. That shouldn't be an issue. And those kinds of things I think should just automatically be passed through and everything should be good. But as long as I feel they create a way to be able to approach these sensibly, to go through a review board, to keep certain criteria, everything should fall into place. But it still has to all be made. And again, we are trusting the Power Five, Congress, the government, NCAA to try and figure all this out. We've seen how that's worked out in the past.
Well, and I know this is something that Kevin, you kind of brought up about the Power Five schools, and I know this is kind of a late ad, but this is something to touch on in the same subject. Mac Brown at North Carolina, he made a really kind of obvious suggestion the other day about because this pandemic, conferences are just kind of adjusting to the regular season plans, but a couple of the Power Five conferences are kind of on the same page, but Mac Brown was talking about they should have a college football commissioner.
Interesting.
I mean, that's an interesting thing right there because they don't have that.
I think the only reason they don't, though, is just because you see so many of the conference leaders, taking a lot of head-on, approach to approaching some of these issues. And then a lot of things I feel like kind of just get dumped on the NCAA, or the NCAA just decides, hey, we're going to take this and we'll tell you what to do with it. So I think a commissioner could be good if you could actually have a figurehead that could step in there and be a good leader. But I feel like just because of how many schools there are, how many different viewpoints there are, I think it could end up just being really convoluted and could end up not really, I think, getting the kind of impact it would really need. I mean, we've seen how like the college football, playoff selection committee is and how much of a train wreck that really has been. And I know some would probably disagree with me on that, but personally, I think it has been a train wreck. You're kind of just letting people just pick and choose off their feelings and whatever kind of argument they want to use to try and pick and choose these teams. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work out that way. So idea of a commissioner could be good, but who knows? I don't think it would hit the impact.
Well, you always see the news coming out of the Power Five before the NCAA seems to make a stance on it. They're the ones that's steering this thing because of obviously the money that's coming in with the Power Five conferences. I say Power Five, I'm going to use air quotes on that because the American has suggested Power Six. We're strong enough to compete in all those other areas, especially a lot of other sports venues. I'm not just talking American football, I'm talking across the board. The American is very competitive. And
Okay.
if we do go with a commissioner, I can see more of a level playing field instead of the Power Five driving everything, because we see that with the selections as well with the college football playoffs.
Right.
I think money needs to be split up. I think competition is better if we can kind of spread it, not just focus on the Power Five. We focus on all the conferences as a whole. I think college football just gets better from that point on.
I will agree with that competition is better, but money talks, and that's where the Power Five makes all the money. And maybe in other sports we're talking about the Power Five. That's usually reference to just football, and maybe even because even college basketball, there's so many more conferences.
Yeah.
So
Very
the Power Five,
conferences.
I think the Power Five only goes to college football. And when you're talking about college football, there is only a Power Five. There's no 6, there's no 7. I know UCF has had a nice run the last couple years.
You know what there is though? There's a Notre Dame.
They're literally the only school that in the national spotlight that has been any good. Memphis has had a good offense, I understand that, but UCF's the only one in the last 5 to 7 years that's actually been decent. That's outside. Yes, you're an independent, dude. Get out of here.
We're the best independent.
You can't be mad. How can you be mad at the party that you're not even allowing yourself into?
Because we have our own party.
Here's what I'm going to find interested in seeing what the American follows up and really response to this name, image, and likeness is, because the Power Five comes out and says, hey, we're going to do this. If the student athletes have any backlash to this Power Five legislation that they rolled out, if the American comes out or the conferences out west come out and say, hey, you can earn more money off your name, image, and likeness with us, they might steal some of those 3-4 star recruits that may have gone to a Power Five school. Because guess what? If I go to USF or UCF or one of these schools, I can get paid more off my name, image, and likeness. So
yeah, and that's I agree, because once California did it and everyone, NCAA had a little backlash against them, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Florida then one-upped California. It's like, hey, we're going to do it for 2020 summer. And I think that's the idea, is that hopefully it'll strengthen their other sports, because now high school athletes are going to want to come to Florida to play at the colleges. Doesn't matter what college, because not all of them are going to get into Florida, Miami, Florida State. They're going to go to the UCFs, the USFs, the FAUs. They're going to go to those schools because, I mean, hey, if you're a top athlete at FAU, guess what? You're still in the greater Miami area. You're going to end up being a little bit of a bigger star than if you were at, say, I don't know, Tulsa.
Yeah, and it's going to be how well these student athletes start marketing themselves. You're going to start to see them market themselves of, hey, I'm the big fish in this little pond here at UCF, and I can make so much more money if I'm at Alabama and I have to compete with 3 other 5-star recruits in the same position as me. I can go and be the big fish in the little pond and make that much more money. And why not come to Florida when there's no state tax? Makes sense. I wouldn't want to go out to California as an athlete and get taxed incredibly amount when I can go to Florida and make more money.
Yeah. That's the other thing too. That's what I love about Florida. We don't have a state income tax.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of this works out. It's going to be it's definitely going to take time for us to reach any kind of final form of this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of caveats, because I've seen rumblings of people talking about, well, if we go this far and we're letting students have this much power, and then we're letting the Power 5 conferences have much this power, why don't players have any kind of say in how these laws are going to be formed? Which then ended up begging a question of literally a college players association. So things are going to get dicey, I think, before they get better, but we'll see how it all works out.
The college union has been a thing ever since. Remember when Northwestern really tried that? almost 10 years ago now. I think it was 2012-ish.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to form a union, and that got shot down really quick.
But that was to the university. That's not to the entire NCAA. And I think that's something that could have to be looked at.
That's why they tried to do it, because they knew they weren't going to get it past the NCAA, so they tried to do it at their own school level.
But now with NIL laws, though, now you have NIL laws, though, that are actually being brought forth. The NCAA is now having to accept this type of reality. Now you might need a little bit more oversight with having a players association. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Who's going to lead that player association? We got like maybe Reggie Bush to lead the players association, or Maurice Clarett to lead the players association.
Oh yeah, let's put Maurice Clarett at the face of that. He not only took money, he went to jail. Oh yeah, let's just put him in front. That'd be great.
I mean, just go ahead and have O.J. Simpson be an advisor too. Why not?
You just read my mind. I was about to say, let's just put O.J. Simpson while we're at it.
Right. No, he's salivating over new Broncos. Yeah. Oh my gosh, too crazy. Getting too wild in here. Anyways, though, something else though that's wild, crazy, and fun is none other than PodChaser. What can you tell us about PodChaser, Craig?
So PodChaser is your daily source for podcast discovery. Apple Podcasts is no longer the only credible place to rate and review podcasts. On PodChaser, you can not only follow shows, you can follow individual creators such as ourselves. You can browse every podcast ever made, and you can rate and review individual episodes. We're also on PodChaser. You just go to podchaser.com and search keyword FinalScore. That's one word, FinalScore, and give us a follow, a rating, and a review.
Definitely some awesome stuff. So definitely go check it out. But at this moment, we're going to go ahead and switch to a new segment that for now we're going to call Social Madness, where we're going to take social media posts that we have been seeing, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, wherever it may be, and bring it on the show to put our 2 cents in on it. Because some of these are a little more serious. Some of these are funny as hell. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. And Craig, I'm not going to lie, though. Yeah. You got a good collection of them, man. You got a really good collection this week.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been scouring Twitter. I try to be as active as I can when I'm not like working. So this is gonna be interesting. I don't know what order you have these in, so this is gonna be hilarious.
Yes.
We found some gems this week.
Oh, we definitely did. And the first one we're gonna throw up is the Ed Orgeron one. This one was quite funny unto itself. He said during his visit by Vice President Mike Pence on Tuesday in Baton Rouge, he said, "We need to play. This state needs football. This country needs it. The coronavirus can be handled." And now just imagine that, 10-pack a day voice saying that, we need to play. The state needs football. Like, it's too good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good impression.
Well, I try to do what I can right now.
I just thought of a new comedy segment. You can be Ed Orgeron.
Oh, deal.
You could do an Ed Orgeron. Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, we're gonna see what's going on to play some great. Go Tigers.
Yeah, I thought this was really interesting because it was during a visit by Mike Pence. I don't know if this was at like a rally or if it was at the school or what was going on, but I could just imagine the roar of the crowd behind the cameras. This is the Southern ignorance is bliss at its finest right here. Just like, hey, we can't have any more coronavirus cases if we don't tell everyone the numbers. Like,
right.
Let's just stop testing. We can't have any numbers then. That's the dumbest logic I've ever heard. This is funny because it's very Southern logic right here.
And everybody in that crowd was just sure they were just loving it because, we're going to get the football back. But our next one,
I could just imagine hearing all the snowflake chants, in that too.
Oh, it's too good. But our next one was about top 5 prospect Jonathan Kuminga, who announced Wednesday that he's going to be bypassing college and joining the G League Professional Path Select Program. And he's the 5th ESPN 100 prospect in the 2020 class to choose this G League route over college. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad, Kevin, you brought this up in our previous segment. This is going to be – I mentioned this when this first got announced last year, that this is going to be a thing. The NCAA needs to be paying close attention. They're being so reactive about a lot of stuff. They're not being proactive about trying to keep their top athletes to continue to make them money. This is going to happen a lot. I mean, he's getting paid, I think it was $500,000 for 1 year in the G League, and then he can go to the draft. Like, this is exactly what's going to happen moving forward. More athletes are going to skip they're going to skip going to college so they can actually make money, get coaching under NBA coaching, and then hit the draft and make money in the process and be able to make endorsements.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm interested to see how the NBA handles this, because you're going to have an influx of kids 17, 18, 19 years old that go this avenue instead of the NCAA. I would like to see them put forward some type of educational training along with the G League. So they obviously are coached by NBA coaches. They get the experience. They're playing that higher level talent. And then if you provide some type of education along with that G League, along with them getting paid, you're going to see the floodgates open on this thing. You're going to see a lot more athletes join this, because I know you guys as parents would know that you've always said, and me as a teacher have always said, education comes first. So a lot of parents are apprehensive about sending their kids this route instead of the NCAA route, because the biggest thing hanging over their head is, are you going to have a plan B? Are you going to have a degree when you graduate? Well, now these kids, if the G League steps up and the NBA says, hey, we're going to educate the kids along with paying them, goodbye NCAA. They're just going to go straight to the G League.
They were in conversation when this was getting formed. I don't know if I haven't looked in too deep in this, but they were talking about doing some sort of financial training for these kids that go into the G League, because every rookie that comes into the NBA, they have to sit in. It's basically like a conference of all the other rookies, and they go over financial do's and don'ts, getting a bunch of money. So the NBA kind of does it. I don't know if they've gone so much as doing what you're talking about, but I think they've had that conversation at least a little bit to at least give them some financial literacy courses to be like, hey, you're getting $500,000 at 17, 18 years old. Here's how you should be smart with it. Whether they use it or not, it's a different story.
Yeah. Can you imagine if they actually brought in educators or professors, though, to provide these kids with not only payment through the G League, but on the side, they're educating these kids to where they have a accredited degree to go along with the NBA money?
Yeah, game changer.
Game changer. Definitely could be. And you know who else commented on this? Man, I think it was us. Who said this is much more, this will be much more common in the near future. Hope the NCAA is paying attention. So definitely hope they are paying attention, because this could end up really upending them if you see a lot more athletes take this kind of route. But
and the story that we broke about the NIL laws, that actually happened after this kid has already announced that he's going to the G League. So I know they've been kind of in the works, but we mentioned all the NIL laws and stuff. This is now like the NCAA, like I said, they're being very reactive. They're waiting until this came out. Oh, by the way, Power 5, we're going to start trying to talk to Congress about getting NIL laws.
Right. But here, I got a crazy stat for you guys. You want to hear this one? It's a wild stat. The Browns made a total of 12 first-round picks between 2011 and 2017. Myles Garrett just became the first of those 12 players to sign a second contract with the team, coming from Field Yates on Twitter. I tell you what, that is absolutely crazy.
They've had such bad luck and or scouting in a lot of their picks. I mean, you're talking about they had most famously Johnny Manziel. They've had Tim Couch when they first came back in '99.
Brady Quinn.
They've had Brady Quinn. They've had Brandon Weeden. They've had so many bad picks in the first round over the last couple of last 2 decades, really. It's really shocking to me that. And then Myles Garrett got paid. Not only is he the first one to get a second contract with the team, but he's also now the highest paid defensive player in the NFL.
Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. But you know what else is wild?
All because he swung a helmet.
Yeah, exactly. And now I saw a graphic actually that came out. I wish I would have gotten this social media post where it was talking about with this new contract, Myles Garrett would be able to nail Mason Rudolph like 7,000 plus times and have enough money to be able to pay all the fines. Absolutely crazy. But you know what else is crazy? On this date in 1934, Frank Gore became a 49er.
I love this. I'm pretty sure this is a picture of like Gale Sayers or something.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But it was hilarious that this was a couple days ago. This came out. Somebody as a joke did it. I wish I would have had the screenshot of Frank Gore's reaction.
Oh, yeah.
It was great because he thought it was hilarious. He's like, all right, yeah, that's kind of funny, but kind of hurts because he is old. He's old by NFL standards.
Oh, yeah.
In his late 30s. But, I mean, he's slowly marching up the NFL rushing leader charts.
He really is.
So,
I mean,
gotta be
stay
doing
there
something
long
right.
enough. Yeah, for real. But you know what else is kind of funny? Have you heard about what's been happening with the Buffalo Bills?
This is something that not a lot of people have talked about because of what's going on with the Washington former Redskins.
Oh, yeah. The Buffalo Bills and New Era Cap Company have jointly announced that New Era has asked to be released from their naming rights and sponsorship deal with the Bills. The Bills and New Era are currently negotiating the details of the separation, and the Bills are beginning the process of pursuing a new naming rights partner for the stadium. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, looking into this story a little bit more, I was really kind of thrown off by the fact that this happened because New Era is based in Buffalo, New York. But digging a little deeper, New Era has been hit by the pandemic so hard that they've been laying off a ton of employees. They've lost a ton of money. And so the reason they're pulling out of this agreement is the fact that they just don't have enough money to pay it over the next couple of years. They signed a 7-year agreement. They're 4 years in, so they've kind of nixed the last 3 years. But there's been a few suitors that have, at least on Twitter, been knocking.
That is true, including none other than Buffalo Wild Wings, who had nothing but an eye react for this. So could we see the Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Wild Wings come together?
That would be a great match made in heaven, I think, to have like a B-Dubs stadium or B-Dubs field or something. But within the last 2 days, I know I told you guys this before the show started, there has been an official bid that has been tossed out there for $12.5 million, and you guys are going to get a kick out of this, by the company called Tushy, T-U-S-H-Y. If you're not familiar with that name, they are a bidet company. If you're not familiar with what a bidet is, Google it, and you're going to laugh your ass off. They want to call this the first ever, quote, toilet bowl.
Oh, my gosh.
Very fitting. Except in Buffalo, those wouldn't work. By the time it starts spraying, it turned to ice because it's so damn cold up there.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, my God. You guys are absolutely
Another
killing
one
me.
that would be fitting is those lifetime folding tables. They need to come out and
That'd be
offer up
great.
a
Yes.
That'd be great. Could you imagine? But okay, if B-Dubs was the sponsor of this field, could you imagine the tailgating parties at Buffalo when that happens?
Oh, my gosh.
insane. They're already insane up there.
Yeah, they are.
I think that's on my bucket list, is to go tailgate at a Buffalo Bills game and just to be a part of that madness
God.
Yeah.
before I get too old.
I got a taste of it when the Buffalo Bills came down for the playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple years ago, and Bills Mafia came into town, and actually a lot of the stores in the Jacksonville area stopped selling folding tables at that time. You actually had to have a Florida ID to buy a folding table, and if you had an out-of-state ID like a New York license, you could not buy a folding table in Duval County. It was great.
That's hilarious.
That's the best. But speaking of Duval and the Jacksonville Jaguars, seeming like they're having a couple issues over there because the Jags have received multiple offers for a defensive end. And I know I'm going to butcher this. You know I'm going to.
Yep. Let's hear it.
Yannick.
You got it?
Yannick.
Hold on. Ngakwe. No, Ngako.
There you go.
Yeah,
Ngakwe.
you got it. Ngakwe.
Hey, now let's not do any kind of quiz for that. All right, so
Yannick Ngakwe.
So with Ngakwe, there was all kinds of offers, including one involving a Pro Bowl player who didn't fit their system, but not enough value to deal a player of this caliber per sources. So there's been a lot going on with this, and of course, final score being final score, we had to throw our 2 cents in there and said, given all the holes the Jaguars have, probably wasn't a good fit because they're probably planning on tanking. Are they the new tanking, or are they going to hashtag Trevor Lawrence this?
I think they're going to try to be in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. I mean, we've talked about this on a few episodes ago. Gardner Minshew's a great story. He's a very good fit for Duval County, but he's probably not their long-term answer at quarterback. But I'm just wondering, who's this Pro Bowl guy that doesn't fit a system? He's a goddamn Pro Bowler. How does he not fit your system?
Exactly.
Just put the guy on the field. But this guy, Ngakoue, has clearly stated time and time again all offseason, he does not want to play for the Jags anymore. Why are they still holding on to him? Get rid of him. Get some value while you can.
Yeah, you definitely
the same
should.
thing they went through with Ramsey. It's the same thing they went through with all these other guys that have hightailed it out of there and then turned around and got on Twitter and bashed the organization because you have an organization that seems to be very stubborn. You have an organization that should have had a change of guard, and all the Jags fans are with me on this one. We should have had a change of guard, a clean sweep of the organization back when they made moves. Why we still have Doug Marrone is beside me. Why we still have these individuals in here. Why we still have Dave Caldwell as our GM. It makes no sense. It should have been clean house. Start brand new. Start with Gardner Minshew if that's the track you guys want to go into, and then hopefully nab Trevor Lawrence if you guys can go 1-15. But knowing Jaguars fashion, they're probably going to go a 4-12 or a 5-11, just enough to where they do not have that top pick.
That's right.
That'd be very Jaguars of them.
I know, Chris, you have heard me shout from the mountaintops ever since we started this goddamn show that Doug Marrone is a terrible fucking head coach. He doesn't deserve to be an NFL head coach.
Tell us how you really feel. Man, are you going to shout it from the rooftop even more and be like,
I'm a man. I'm 40.
I'm not 40 yet, okay? Get out of here with that. No, but like even Calais Campbell has said on Twitter, talking about his trade, he wanted to be in Jacksonville long term, but just the way that they're running the organization, they decided to trade him. They're going to run into the same thing with Leonard Fournette, who doesn't want to be there anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. Caldwell should have been gone years ago. Marrone should have been gone after last year. Like, this is just a complete train wreck. And having kind of grown closer to the Jags for the last 6 years, watching them since I've lived in Florida, like, it's really grueling. Like, I just love misery. I'm a Lions fan and a Jags fan. I just love misery.
Oh, man, that's absolutely sad. But it's okay. We still love you, even though you're a dirty Michigan fan. Anyways, I guess I could go for both of you, huh? Dirty Michigan fans. Anyways, but it's okay. You know, I actually, you know, I believe in a true team, you know, where we really try and actually win games. You know, we don't just hire people. Never mind. We're getting on tangents here. But you know what else is awesome? None other than Radius Digital Marketing and all the great stuff that they have done for us, because we just want to take this time, because it's always important for us. We want to go ahead and just take this moment to give a quick shout out to Alec and Sean at Radius Digital Marketing. They've been extremely helpful in building our brand and expanding our audience. They specialize in ad management, lead generation, brand awareness, and social media marketing. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, contact Alec at Alekanuzis at radiusdm.com. That's ALEKANUZIS at radiusdm.com for more information. All right, by this point, though, we're going to go ahead and switch gears on over to the good old give or go. And I think we got a few good ones today, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this first one out to you, Craig. So the NFL has revealed COVID-19 protocols under the negotiation with the Players Union recently for return to play. Give or go?
We got to touch on this, give on this a little bit. They had their league meeting the other day as well. I know I shared that statement with you, Chris. I don't know if you're able to share that to the audience, but they decided that the start of training camps are going to happen very soon, and they've decided that, you know, they think they've got something brewing as far as what should they do about COVID-19. J.J. Watt has been very, very vocal about this. Even on Twitter, he's put out a statement that we don't know what to expect with COVID-19, and the Players Union doesn't know what to expect. The NFL wants to try to force this as quick as they can, and J.J. Watt, among other players in the union, have been really pushing hard against the NFL just to make sure that guys are safe and completely understand that part of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to play around with this because we've already seen how many players, especially when it comes to, like, say, college football or baseball or basketball, how many of these players came in and already tested positive. Guys are already having to be quarantined and put to the side for now until they're able to make it through it. So it's going to be very precarious to see how all this works out, especially with probably the most the most physical sport there is right now. And these guys, you're talking about having 22 men on the field all going at each other. It's bound to have all kinds of craziness. But I actually do have the training camp release that they made for the dates. That one definitely is going to be very interesting, which I'm going to go ahead and throw that up there now. Transition faster. There it is. You got to love technology. But these are the actual dates that they are looking for returning to training camp. Now, a lot of this is extremely soon. We see right now, we're sitting here, it is July 19th, episode 66 of Final Score. Rookies have to report in 2 days. 2 days. So you got to think there's going to be a lot of growing concerns for the health and well-being of all these players going through this.
Absolutely. And some of the other things they documented, and JJ Watt, I wish I would have had the screenshot for this as well. He posted on Twitter a list of things that we do and do not know about the negotiations between the Players Association and the NFL as far as when we're going to start due to COVID-19. But they're talking about teams and players are going to be told they won't be able to leave their hotel rooms when they're on the road to eat in or otherwise use restaurants that are open to the public. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet, but the fact that the NFL is pushing for this to try to get things going, it scares me a little bit that the NFL is doing this and they're just pushing forward like nothing's wrong, and they're just hoping that the Players Association is just going to go with it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the correct type of approach to take with it. But, we'll take that, give or go into our next one, because honestly, it kind of just flows right into it. With all the training camps being reporting dates being announced, with the COVID-19 protocols being announced, with the return to play, I guess, somewhat being in place, do you think that the NFL starts the season on time as scheduled?
I'm sorry, I didn't see that we changed this last minute. Sorry, that was my fault. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but
yeah, you did.
I think they're going to end up modifying it to push back the preseason, because they're talking about the NFL owners want 2 games of preseason. The Players Association wants no preseason whatsoever to try to wait until we have to actually be on the field, try to push it back, which I completely understand that. So man, this is tough. I want to say no, that they're not going to start on time as scheduled for the regular season, but this is the NFL. They're trying to protect the shield. Goodell is probably going to push this forward. We're probably going to have at least one preseason game. The last week of preseason will be the only preseason game, and then NFL schedule starts as scheduled.
Yeah, I think we have one preseason game. I agree with you on that one. If we do not have a preseason, you're going to see a lot of very sloppy, very unorganized football for the first couple of weeks until they start to kind of get in a groove and get their offenses going. So your fans just sit back and expect it. It's going to be very sloppy football to start, and we're going to see a high number of injuries, asking these players to go out there without any warm-up, it seems. And I know the players' organization doesn't want the preseason. They think they can roll in week 1 and get going. But I think at least one preseason game is necessary. That way these guys kind of get acclimated to the brutality of what is known as the NFL, get used to the hits, get their body acclimated to it. Otherwise, you're going to see a high number of injuries, or you're going to see a lot of load management taking place in those unevenly matchup games where the scoreline gets kind of out of hand. You're going to see a lot of players sit for that, a lot of high-profile players not playing and kind of load manage as they go throughout the season.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It's definitely going to be a whole precarious approach in this situation, so it's going to be interesting.
Nothing has started, though, yet. We haven't had
Not
MLB.
officially.
We haven't had NHL. We're just kind of waiting in limbo. The NBA's back to their NBA bubble. They're trying to get things going on, and we're seeing players test positive here and there. In the NHL, it's happened. We've already seen in the NBA it's happened, and they've had to do these self-quarantines throughout, and it's kind of interesting. I think once the first league gets going, then we'll kind of see the dominoes fall, but nothing's in place yet. So it's this waiting game that is very precarious.
Yeah, we're back to training camps for baseball and then basketball, but the real seasons for both of those don't start till I think next week, the last week of July.
Yeah.
So that I'm a little bit more curious to see how the MLB is going to handle it because they still have to travel, that's what the NFL is going to be really paying close attention to, because you can't unless you plan on putting the NFL in a bubble or kind of doing what the NHL is doing, which NFL does not want to do that. They're not really going to pay attention to too much to the NBA, maybe how they test and how they quarantine guys, but they're really going to pay attention to how baseball handles it. And I guess we've got to wait another week. And I know NFL's probably going to change their stance a little bit if things don't go as planned for all those leagues that are about to kick off.
Yeah, and with baseball, there's no bubble.
What's that terrible movie they made a long time ago, The Bubble Boy? Let's just put it on a bubble. And it's going to be like that bubble soccer or the YouTube videos where you see two guys going at each other with the exercise ball and bouncing off on them.
That would be hilarious. I would love to see that.
Oh my gosh, y'all kill me.
Oh, let's see. Let's move on. Speaking of the NBA, I'll throw this one up to you guys. The NBA says the races for the season's individual trophies are over, and all play for the rest of the season will not be taken into account when it comes to the season awards. Give or go.
Gonna briefly give on it. I don't think this is really too big of a story, and I'm not too surprised. When you're taking teams out of their normal element of being in their home arenas or being in their front of their home crowd or being on the road doing a 5-game, 6-game, 7-game road trip, it's a lot different kind of pressure and a lot different kind of a setting than, being in the bubble with basketball court after basketball court after basketball court lined up in a banquet hall to be able to play these games. So and with no fans. So to try and say that any of this is really going to have any kind of impact or be the same in any way to what the season would have been is kind of ridiculous. So I do agree with this because we're at this point just trying to have the rest of the season so we can name a champion and so the NBA can show its support for social injustice and do everything they want to do. Because you got to keep in mind, the big thing the NBA said too is that they really want to do this so they can be able to put social injustice on the platform it needs to be on. And I can agree with that message, but this is not something I think that's going to be taken as seriously by the players. This is more of a let's do it to do it rather than a do it to be competitive. So is what it is. We'll see who those award winners are.
I do not agree with this individual thing. And here's my take on this. Great players, how do you measure them against other great players? It's how well they face adversity. During adverse situations, how do they rise to the top? So you put this adverse situation in front of them where they're in this NBA bubble, they're out of their element. Let me see how they acclimate, and let me see how many points they can score. Let me see how they can do in these high pressure situations as they move throughout. They're not in their norm, they're not in their comfort, and you could put an asterisk next to it, but continue the numbers. Why not?
Yeah. Well, here's a argument that has been it's a very poorly known secret that a lot of times when it comes to all these individual races, especially the MVP race, voters already have their minds made up 3/4 of the way through the season, which is about when we stopped because of the pandemic. So I'm not surprised at all that they're not taking this into account because every year they've already got their minds made up by March anyway. They're not taking into account the rest of the season and the playoffs and all that. They already have their minds made up. Giannis Antetokounmpo, yes, the Bucks have been the best team, and he's been kind of stepping up his game, but they already knew he was going to be the MVP all the way back in December. Like, they already kind of knew that. So I'm not really too surprised that they're not using this restart as part of their voting process.
Absolutely. So we'll definitely see how it works out. I just want to know who's actually going to win. Let's announce it then. If you guys already know, let's do it. Let's not play around. Let's do it.
No, they got a dog and pony show of doing all the awards banquet virtually now and all this stuff. They got to do that. All advertising dollars, my man.
Oh, yeah. I got to set it all up, take your time, and all that craziness. Anyways, continuing on to our last Give or Go. Rashawn Holmes was held in quarantine after leaving the NBA bubble in Orlando to pick up food delivery. Give or go.
this is more hilarious than anything. So what happened in this story was Kelly Oubre Jr. of the Phoenix Suns put out a tweet a while back. This is about a week ago now, that he said that you can get food delivery in the bubble and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure he was probably doing this just to troll people and see who would actually be dumb enough to try it. And Raquan Holmes did. So he goes and actually orders, I think it was like Grubhub or something. He orders food, gets it delivered, crosses like a foot over the line of the bubble to get his food delivery. And then he has to put out a statement, get quarantined again. He's got to put out an apology. And it's like, how dumb are you? Like, literally, they've got food there. Like, they put you in a bubble for a reason. Don't be an idiot. And this is funny because somebody was dumb enough to actually try it.
Yeah, but the big thing I see with it, though, have you seen the pictures of the food they've been given? It's not world class in any way.
So, by the way, that was just for the first few days while they were in quarantine. They have since, if you pay attention to some of the later stuff, players now have been on social media showing the menus. Like, they're getting 5-star meals now on their menus. Like, that was
Surf
literally
and turf,
for the
baby.
first. Yeah, they literally put out in the first couple days, yes, it was not great food. The NBA quickly changed that because they said that it was because of quarantine. Now they put out a full menu. They're eating way better than the three of us. I'll tell you that right now.
I don't know, sir. I had some steak just the other night. I think I'm eating pretty good.
Yeah. What was it? Strip? Ribeye?
London broil. But anyways, at the end of the day, though, yeah, I have heard they have been having that bounce back. But it was just so funny seeing all those posts of like half like warm cheese on just a piece of bread with a little piece of lettuce. Like, it was just horrible, looking like you're getting prison food almost. So
it's like the fire festival out in the Bahamas that never took off.
Yeah. Oh man, that was crazy unto itself. All right, but that was the end of Give or Go, which brings us to the week ahead, and definitely going to be some interesting stuff going on. Of course, right now we have I saw you put it on here with the Memorial Tournament final round that's going on today, Craig. I know you want to talk about it.
Yeah, we didn't really have any place on the show to talk about it, but I've been watching some Memorial Tournament this weekend. Just a couple of updates for golf fans. Tiger Woods is about to tee off in 5 minutes at 11:25 a.m. He is +2. Doesn't really have a shot at the leader, who's John Rahm, at 12 under. The big story about this tournament so far has been just the kind of the up and down play of a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a kind of a rough go the first couple days of the tournament. The leader, I think, after the first 2 rounds was only about 2 under. So it was really, really tough. Not really tough conditions, but it was just a lot of up and down play. A couple of other notables tied at second. Ryan Palmer and Tony Finau are 8 under apiece. Jason Day is tied for 5th at 5 under. Rory McIlroy is tied for 12th with Jordan Spieth, both at 2 under. And then a couple other guys that did not make the cut. One of them being the Bryson DeChambeau, who's been a big story since the quarantine because he's buffed up, and he has really put on a lot of muscle since the quarantine. He did not make the cut at 5 over. Ricky Fowler also missed the cut at 5 over. But it's been an interesting tournament to watch. There's been a lot of sloppy play, but I think the scores overall, since they haven't been able to have crowds at these, have actually been better because there's not crowds and there's not the people as soon as someone swings, get in the hole, like all that stuff is not going on. You don't have all these drunk assholes on the golf course messing with the pros. So scores have been a lot better, but this tournament has been a really, really tough course. Jack Nicklaus has really outdone himself making this course this year.
Absolutely. It's definitely some good stuff to hear. And then we also have some stuff coming up from the Rugby Review. What we got going on, Kevin?
First and foremost, we got the interview dropping with Ben Hickson. It's a little bit change of gear. We're introducing a new sport here on the Rugby Review, and that's Aussie Rules Football. If you're not familiar with it, log into YouTube, watch some Aussie Rules Football, get familiar with the rules and regulations of the sport, because I'm going to be talking about it here on later episodes. We also got something coming forth on the next Final Score episode 67. We're going to introduce the Jacksonville Saints at great length. They've actually stepped up and provided us with some sponsorship funds, and so we're looking forward to that partnership there with the Jacksonville Saints here in Jacksonville. Also, I want to kind of highlight one of the events going on in this upcoming. It's called a Rucking Good Summer Virtual 5K, and the benefits go to the Tampa Bay Crew, the women's side. And this is one of their fundraisers. Obviously, with everything being shut down here in the area, it's been hard to fundraise for women's rugby, but I like to give a shout out on starting and providing benefit to women's leagues across the world. Especially when we highlighted the Ghana women's rugby that's taking off there in the west coast of Africa. So another good cause. You can find the link to sign up for this virtual 5K on the Final Score page. Just look for it, Rucking Good Summer 5K, and all benefits go to the Tampa Bay Crew women's side. I also have some rumors, hopefully bring light to it. Hopefully I have more details in the coming weeks. But I heard that there's a women's rugby league team that's going to be started out of Jacksonville. And Sean Richardson, who we had earlier on in previous episode, I think it was back in March or April, we had Sean Richardson on the show. And he actually, I saw a little post from him. I'm hoping it's true that he's in the beginning stages of starting a women's rugby league team to kind of go hand in hand with the Jacksonville Axemen. So we'd have two teams based here in Jacksonville, because the women's rugby league is starting to take off here in the country. So I'm all for that. I'm going to have more details on that, along with all of the NRL scores and updates for round 11 coming on the later episode. But make sure you guys check out the Ben Hickson interview that should be dropping tomorrow.
Absolutely. So definitely make sure to check that out.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
Let's hope that does get off the ground. That'd be great for the sport of rugby, and especially for Jacksonville. We've got there's a lot of sports teams there that not a lot of people know about, and I think that'd be a great thing for both Jacksonville and the sport of rugby. And again, I know you already mentioned it, cat's out of the bag there. Jacksonville Saints, one of our first official sponsors of the show. Thank you so much. We're going to be hopefully be able to have a little bit more coming from them in the coming weeks, but be on the lookout for that. And we're excited. We're excited to have our first official sponsor.
Yeah, definitely going to be exciting. Real exciting. A lot of great stuff going on. So definitely make sure to see more of that. That you join us next week for episode 67 of Final Score. Definitely going to be a great time. A lot of great stuff going on. But sadly, though, until then, this is the end of our episode. We thank you all so much for joining us, and we definitely will see you next week. Make sure to follow Final Score on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram by searching at PCN Final Score, and give us a like and a follow on those platforms. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Chris, that's Craig, and Kevin, and you guys just watch Final Score. Y'all have a great night.
Podcast City Network.